Hi there, welcome to Community Forum. My name's Andrea Gartner and I'm the chair of the Danbury Democrats. I'm so happy to have as a guest once again to this show, Senator Julie Kushner. Julie represents the 24th the Senate District in the state legislature, which includes all of Danbury, New Fairfield, and Sherman. So please say welcome to our guest today. Hi, Senator.
Hi there. You forgot Bethel. I got to always put in Bethel.
That's right. And Bethel, yes.
It's great to see you, Andrea. It's great to be here again.
Yeah, it's nice. And I also want to thank Comcast Studios for being able to provide this service to their viewers during the time of COVID-19. So much has changed in the last few months. So thank you for taking your time today and giving us some updates, as well as talking to other things that are out happening in the community. So first of all, I just know from personal contact with you that you are incredibly busy every day of the week responding to constituents. So we've gone into phase 2 opening here in the state of Connecticut, and if you want to just lead us in some of the more substantive updates that have been happening. And also, I just really want to extend a thanks to you and all our elected officials. I really think that the data is showing that the response to COVID that we've been taking, although somewhat, on the more conservative side, are certainly panning out and working.
I think that's right. And, none of us anticipated this crisis that we would be in. And, everything sort of went upside down on March 11th was the last day we were in Hartford. We heard at that moment that there was going to be a complete cleaning of the Capitol, and we should expect to come back in 4 days. And obviously we never were able to return because of the seriousness of the epidemic and the pandemic and the way it hit us here in Connecticut. And I think that in many ways we have been so fortunate to have responded relatively quickly at that moment. But we still have, suffered a great amount of death, huge impact on our families. People have been very stressed by either working on the front lines as essential workers or not working, difficulty getting access to funds, either unemployment funds or the stimulus check in some cases. People have really suffered. And while we're feeling that we're coming out of this a bit, we still, I think we're very mindful of the potential that it could get bad again. And we don't want to go through that. We want to do everything we can to avoid that. And also to recognize that we're not really out of it. There are still people being hospitalized. There are still people dying. There are still tremendous restrictions on our way of life. And so I feel like we've come a long way in a short period of time, but there's still a lot to be done. But we are on the positive side, both in terms of the ability to reopen, which is completely tied to reduction of hospitalizations and the reduction of new cases. So we're seeing those kinds of positive changes, and tied to that is the reopening, which we will start the new phase tomorrow, June 17th. So it is, slowly reopening, cautiously reopening. And I think my message to everyone out there is please wear your masks. Please engage in social distancing. The actions that we've taken have really, really made a difference. I had a conversation with someone who said, well, this is no different than the flu. In 2018, it's true, we were hit hard by flu, and a lot of people died in 2018, but they died over a span of a year, whereas more people than that have died in just a few months. And the people have died while we're sheltering in place. Even with all the precautions that were taken, this is nothing like anything we've experienced before.
Yeah, I think some of that is the education side of it. I know I've been following protocols, you've been following protocols, And you've started to reach out to your constituents because usually this time of year you're out at community events, whether it's a business ribbon cutting, because I know you're such a supporter of small business, or civic clubs are having picnics or parades, and you haven't been able to do that. So I know that you've been organizing wellness checks for your constituents. I've participated in some of those. What is the feedback on that? Because there is a question about how people feel about the reopening.
Well, so as you described, I made a decision back in April when I realized there was no way that I was going to have the regular contact I have with constituents to not just see them at events, but to really talk to people about what's going on in their life. And with all of the trouble people were having, I think they even weren't always clear on how to get in touch. Certainly many constituents got in touch with us, but I always had the feeling it was the tip of the iceberg, that there were deep problems that we needed to address, and we weren't hearing enough from people. So back in April, I began organizing what I've called wellness checks. So essentially, we're reaching out to people in the district to ask how things are in their family. Is there anything they need in the way of access to resources, help with any of the resources that they might be having trouble with? How's everybody in your family? The response has been incredible. I've talked to over 1,000 people through the help of volunteers and people in my office. And the response is incredible. People are very happy to have a call. And we have, in fact, discovered many problems. So essentially,
I'm sorry to cut you off. What is an example of like a service or some way that you can help, something that's happened as a result of these calls?
So frequently we find out somebody in the family is having trouble getting access to their unemployment. They applied, but it hadn't gone through. That's probably the number one issue that we've been dealing with. And because I'm chair of the labor committee, I was already dealing with that, not just for our constituents here in the 24th district, but really throughout the state. I was helping to coordinate and find out what were the hangups in the Department of Labor that made this so hard. So that's the most common, I would say. But it also is, so we have had people who have had food insecurity and connected them with a food bank or a resource for food. We had someone who desperately needed to fill prescriptions and didn't have enough money. We've been able to connect them with United Way. We also find stimulus checks, people who didn't get their stimulus checks. And in that case, we're very fortunate to be able to connect them with our Congresswoman's office, Johanna Hayes' office, because they have that federal connection and they're able to follow up on people who've had trouble with their stimulus checks. So most frequently, it's those kinds of issues. Unfortunately, I've had very extensive conversations with someone whose mother's in a nursing home, and through the wellness call, we found out that there were some serious issues there. And we've been able to have multiple conversations. She, in fact, did get COVID-19. She did end up in the hospital with other complications. And, so we've had repeated conversations with that constituent about how we can help. And mostly because this person wants to know that this wouldn't happen to someone else. And so, those are the kinds of very intricate, very detailed problems that people are having that we're able to connect them with services.
And if someone wanted to, do you have your legislative number offhand?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's in my head. So if anyone has a problem and they would like our assistance, you can call my office, which is 860-240-0509. And you can get a message to me or my aide, Mike Fallon. He's become a wizard at understanding unemployment problems. He's a great resource and a great assistance to me. So our office, again, is 860-240-0509.
And I also, you have a Facebook page that you interact a lot with your constituents on there, as well as providing some Facebook Live forums. You've done it with the emergency room doctor at Danbury Hospital and other people. I would encourage any of the viewership who hasn't yet liked your page, if they're on Facebook, to do that, because it really is a great resource of information.
Yes, you can get there by either putting in Senator Julie or State Senator Julie Kushner. You'll find me on Facebook, and we have been doing some Facebook Live events there, and we're going to have another one this week with Commissioner Lehman to talk about the reopening. And you asked Andrea about, what are people saying on the calls about the reopening, and I would say, and I read all the responses. I'm reading through. I'm not on all the calls, but I'm reading through all the responses. Every note that's been taken, I have reviewed, and I would say most people are saying, let's take it. They're anxious to reopen. They want to see businesses do well in Connecticut, but they're also very anxious about going out, and certainly want us to be careful. I think that's what's interesting is, as much as you embrace, I know personally, as much as I embrace and want these businesses to open and be successful, I know I'm 68 years old, so I'm turning 68. My husband corrects me, I'm not 68 yet, but I will be in like 2 weeks. But I am a little cautious about going out and interacting. I'm real careful. I want to see that everybody has masks on. I want to see that people are using the sanitizer. I have been in the mall a couple of times. I'm really pleased to say that I think there's good signage going into the mall, trying to make sure people go in and out different doors. There's a lot of hand sanitizer around the mall. There are security guards who do have masks in their backpack. If you're not wearing a mask, they'll offer you one. I think, I haven't been there when it's real crowded, and I haven't been into a lot of stores, but when I do, I appreciate the stores that are keeping the doors shut and only allowing in, the right number of people, and I'm very cognizant of the good actors in this. So you go into a store and you see them wiping down the touchpad after each use, that's that kind of paying attention to keeping things clean and sanitized is what's going to make it possible for us to reopen and remain safe.
Yeah, and there has been some challenges to that, I think, especially with what's cropped up lately with the Black Lives Matter movement and all the protests, the peaceful protests that have been happening, that people have been engaged in Connecticut, certainly in your district. I know I've participated in Danbury. But I think it does matter when you see those protocols being put into place. I feel like there's with the opening, people wanting to get out. The weather certainly has been spectacular. It's really hard to self-check and keep yourself isolated. But the data is showing that what we've been doing has worked. I know I was in Danbury for a Black Lives Matter protest, where I did see people observing safety measures. There was a lot of people who brought masks for those who didn't have them, and you yourself have participated in your district.
I have. I'll be honest. I am concerned about it. A lot of these protests are being led by young people. I'm so happy to see them there and taking leadership and being active and engaged. And this is such a critical moment in our country's history that we really need to be there. And so for me personally, I have not been going out since March to any kind of events. And I have sort of pushed other people to be careful and don't go to events. And for other elected officials and people in government, I've said we need to be very aware that if we're going to put up a picture on Facebook, we should be wearing our masks. We should be socially distancing in those pictures. And so now I'm in this, this has been going on for months. And now we're in this moment where we have to say to ourselves, are we going to stay in our homes? Or are we going to go out and be part of this incredible movement to try and get change and to try and get change now? And, I weighed that and decided that it's important for me to stand with the people who are asking for an immediate action on police reform, immediate action to stop the killing of Black people by police in this country, which has gone on too long. And we haven't addressed it well enough in the past. It's time that we address it and get it right. And so for me, I feel a responsibility to be there. I wish there was more social distancing. I really encourage everybody there, and I've seen most people are wearing masks, but it does concern me that people could get sick again, and that would be a horrible outcome. The one thing I think about, being out there and in these protests, there have been some incredible speakers. And as what is called a white ally, I have realized how important it is for me to hear from people about their experience, so I can fully understand, or that I can begin to understand where people are coming from, why it's so urgent, why there's such anger, why there's such frustration. We just haven't done enough to really address these issues. And I feel like the time has changed, and there are more and more people who really get it now and realize that we can't wait, we have to act now. And I've been in Danbury, where we had a very diverse community, and a lot of people participated. I've been in Bethel. Yesterday, there was a visibility in New Fairfield, and people stood on the four corners of the intersection of 39 and 37. And what was really incredible, there was great spirit. People had signs, they had their masks, they were mostly not touching. I think there were some families that were obviously grouped together. But I think that the response from the people driving by was incredibly heartening. It was so supportive, and people were honking their horns and waving out of the windows and giving us the thumbs up. And this was the overwhelming majority of cars that drove through there. And to me, that really shows that there is change coming, and we have to embrace it. We have to be, as legislators, we need to get on it and get on it quickly.
There is something to say about seizing the moment of this time in history, a carpe momentum, if you will. And I think that the level of awareness has raised so significantly. And I think the best part is that people are having conversations, and they're having very difficult conversations. I know personally that when I'm engaged with someone and perhaps we're not seeing eye to eye, I try my best to bring the conversation back to the existence of social injustice within our country. And because I think there's a lot of people who want to be allies, they don't know how to be allies. There's a lot of people who, especially white people, who might be feeling guilty or feel that they're being told they're racist when they don't feel that way, which is why I tend to shift the subject to and the focus to social injustice. That it's not for people to feel guilty. It's not personal, just as it's more about the structures that are in place. And the response from Hartford, especially along what was just issued this week with police brutality measures getting changed or getting reviewed, is really encouraging.
I know. I think that, I've been, so even though we're not in session throughout the period that would have been session, the Senate Democratic Caucus met every day, and we would have meetings for at least 2 hours every day discussing, the pertinent issues of the moment, whether it was, the nursing home problems that are so difficult and so, really unfortunately, we have tremendous problems in the nursing homes, or whether it was, making sure that we have adequate PPE for the hospitals. I mean, there were policy discussions every day, and also questions for individual constituents that we needed to address, and we did as a caucus. Even after the session, we've continued to meet 2 to 3 times a week. And what we find is that this sort of moment we're in, where there's both this emergency crisis around COVID-19, and there's also this emergency crisis around systemic racism. Also, we have an election coming up in November, and we have to make sure that we make it possible for everyone to vote. So we have these 3 major issues that really require us to to go into session and to address them. And, we're very fortunate.
Is the special session date been set, or?
We've not set the date yet, but everyone's in agreement that we need a special session. And I believe it will happen in July. What we take up in special session, still is being worked on by our leadership in both the House and the Senate, and, working with the governor's office. But I know many of us feel like this is a moment at special session where we have to address these issues in a broad way. There are people in each one of those areas, whether it's healthcare or criminal justice areas, or worker-related issues. There are people that have been working on these very important issues for decades. The response to COVID-19 has brought out that we have a system that relies on healthcare related to work. And when you have so many people out of work, you have so many people without health insurance. And so there are folks that have been working on this for decades and decades. And so we have the expertise to take measures that will address these larger, broader problems in a very effective way. When we talk about, particularly around the issue of Black Lives Matter and systemic racism, we can see the linkage between things like essential workers who have been predominantly Black and brown, and how did COVID-19 impact them and their lives, and the lack of housing, and the issues that involves in Black and brown communities. And so there is this connection between these issues. And it seems like the moment where we need a broad plan to address them.
What would you like to see happen in this special session? Is there a new project that you're particularly working on within your caucus or on one of your committees?
Well, of course, in terms of voting, I feel like it's critically important that we have access to absentee ballots for everyone. For anyone who feels they need that, there needs to be the ability to vote by absentee ballot. We don't want someone to not vote or to make that hard choice to go into a polling place when they don't feel safe. And so clearly making sure we secure the voting for November is a top priority for everyone. I have been working on the issues in labor around essential workers. And what we've found is that there are huge problems with frontline workers who, whether they were working in a hospital or a nursing home or a grocery store, when everybody else was staying home, we still depended on this essential workforce to make sure that we were safe and that we had food. And unfortunately, many of them got sick. And I've been working on legislation that would grant those workers the presumption that they got sick at work and therefore would be entitled to workers' compensation. And that's really, really important. So that's something I've been working on. We don't think they should have to go through appeals and long legal delays, which has been historic with workers' compensation, that we need to acknowledge the important role workers have played in getting us through this hardest period of COVID-19. And so that's one piece of bills. I've been working a lot on the nursing home issues, making sure that nursing home workers have protective equipment that they have that protects them. It protects the people that are living in the nursing homes. That's true for group homes and for the also personal home care, personal care attendants. We need to really make sure that this population is protected. And we know that Connecticut hasn't done well on this. We actually are one of the states with some of the highest deaths in nursing homes. And we still don't know how many nursing home workers contracted COVID-19 and how many of them and their family members contracted it. So we still have a tremendous amount of work to do in that area. And that's something I've been really paying a lot of attention to.
And the supply of PPE to people, the personal protection equipment that they need.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like the situation's better, but it's probably still stressed, the supply chain.
It's better, but we still know, for instance, in the home care area, where people are taking care of folks in their homes, the what's called the consumer, the person who has hired the home care attendant, gets the PPE, not the home care attendant. And that means that doesn't always get transmitted to the home care attendant. And that's a serious problem. We need to sort that out as a state. We need to figure that out. And we need to do it quickly because this continues to be an issue. Making sure that nursing homes were paying, they got extra funding because of COVID-19. We want to make sure that funding was used properly. And part of that is supposed to be used for hazard pay for the workers. And we don't know for sure that happens. So it's these kinds of issues, the PPE, the hazard pay, the workers' compensation. There's a lot to deal with. And, it feels like
wonderful that you're an advocate fighting for them. I mean, it's part of your what your previous professional work was. But I know that you've made great strides, and from what I've heard from people, it's very much appreciated.
Well, thank you. I feel like it's been a very rewarding time to be in this position where we could actually reach out to people and help them make a difference.
So if people do want to help you, and because as you mentioned, it is an election year, you're up for your first re-election, and
Right.
You have organized people around using wellness checks to reach out.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone wants to get involved in that and volunteer to do that phone banking, it's happening twice a week, Wednesday evenings and Saturday mornings.
That's right.
I know I've participated on them. I feel like if anyone's familiar with phone banking, that it's really nice to reach out and check in on people. The response has been really positive, and you're actually really learning a lot about people's day-to-day lives and what their challenges are.
That, anybody who wants to help with that, it's an amazing experience. Some of you have made political phone calls or gotten political phone calls in the past and probably didn't necessarily enjoy doing that, but these are different. This isn't a political call. This is really about having a conversation neighbor to neighbor, and making sure people are doing okay. And people really
want to do that. How can they sign up? And we have here.
You can let me know on Facebook. If you just go to Facebook, if you have Facebook, you can let me know. If you want to give me a call, I'm going to give you a different number for that. You can call 203-751-0903. And that's for any kind of campaign volunteer work, you can use that number. But you can also just let me know on Facebook.
Yeah, through Messenger, right?
Yeah, private message me on Facebook.
Well, Senator, it's always a pleasure. I love working on your campaign. I think of you truly embody the spirit of a public servant, and we're very, very fortunate to have you representing our area so well.